Pourquoi tu peux te dire? Pour surtout pouvoir aller sur ce ghetto sur Facebook. Si je prends mon ordi, c'est la base du web Internet. Internet c'est construit pour utiliser pour les sites. C'est le trou du cul du web. C'est là qu'il y a toutes les pires choses et les plus belles choses.
Comment les plus belles choses?
Facebook existe depuis 4 ans.
C'était quoi sur... Ah non, c'était Rotten, donc c'est le début.
C'est ce qui a remplacé Rotten, mais Rotten ça existe de nouveau, mais c'est moins trash.
Non, mais Rotten, à
Rotten c'était du gore. Quoi.
Ah.
Là il y a un peu de plus que du gore.
Ah, putain, c'est le sujet du Nord.
Tu vois, il est
Ça
pas long.
va être bien. Les gros mutilés.
Merci. Donc, merci d'être venu pour accueillir ici Richard Wentworth, qui est donc artiste, sculpteur, et qui est, il nous fait l'honneur de sa prestigieuse présence. Et je pense que si vous ne le connaissez pas, il gagne à être connu d'abord, et ensuite, peut-être vous allez mieux le connaître maintenant. À vous, Richard. Ah, la lumière. Technicien.
Dans un petit moment, peut-être.
Ah.
Who here is confident in English?
What?
Okay. Bon. L'idée de faire cette conférence, c'est mélanger la langue et prendre les petits risques, les petits blagues. Et je m'excuse si mon français c'est un peu bizarre. Mais il y a des anglais et je dois peut-être utiliser tous les deux. Mais peut-être ça c'est important parce que j'aime beaucoup la langue et j'aime beaucoup l'histoire des langues. Et pour tout, quand on parle effectivement dans une rencontre. C'est un mélange de mots, construction qu'on reçoit. C'est pas le monde parfait de Monsieur Toubon, c'est language. And language is very strange, and everybody has it, if you're lucky. Without it, we aren't us. My cat does not speak. I look into its eyes and I have a lot of ideas about my cat, but I don't think my cat has very many ideas about me. I'm the agent of feeding the cat. It's a relationship constructed around ownership and base sexuality. This is nice. I like doing that. The cat seems to like me doing that. The cat has a better relationship with my wife. So, discuss. This talk could be long, and I think that would be bad. So I will try and do this in, let's say, 50 minutes, 50 minutes. And if you're observant, or I think the point of good conference is you should sleep a little bit. It's good to rest. But you can make little notes, and you might remember. Every single one of these images is in a pair. And every pair, for me, has a little petite friction. And I'm interested in les petites frictions because quand on regarde quelque chose, puis il y a ce moment that there's meaning. There's some, I go seats, or I might go chair, or I might go that chair, not that chair, or that chair, that chair. The chair doesn't know I'm speaking to it, but there's meaning in that space. And before I said that, there was no meaning. I'm a fool standing in front of an audience in a protocol, and you are nice people, so you're facing the front, and you're listening to me, and you are doing the protocol to sit in the seats, and you've been to other conférences, et vous faites les comparaisons. I'm very conscious of les comparaisons. So you go, bad talk, good talk, boring talk, very boring talk. So it's performance. But so is making art. Making art is extrêmement privé. Art making is really in here. It might be in here, but it's somewhere connected. And it's made in private. But everybody here has a small ego problem. So the private act is not enough. In that sense, it's a little bit like bad pornography. It would be like having to tell everybody the next day about some sexual activity. And I think mostly we like our sexual activity to be private or in a very small shared space. We don't tell everybody else about it. Art is a little bit like sexual activity. Sometimes it is masturbation. And then we go, look what I did. Because we expect attention. Because there's a thing that this tribe shares, which is the expectation of attention. And sometimes on va à l'école d'art for the attention. You need les copains, you need les professeurs, you need to make an audience. Go, look what I did. And then sometimes there's a big silence, and you wonder if the silence is this, or it's thoughtful. Somebody's waiting. Sometimes, in my experience, they wait 10 years, 15 years, you hear nothing. And then somebody will say, I saw something of yours once, and da-da-da-da-da. So the friction can be a very slow friction, or if you're lucky, it's a hot friction. But hot friction might not last. So we could have a light time. Could you hear me anyway? Do you need this? Do I need this? Does the machine need this? Does this need this? Do I need this? Finalement. Ok. Il y a une fois, on est un bébé. Ça c'est la vérité pour tout. Et à ce moment, c'est une petite question, il y a de la couture pour le bébé ou non? Et ce bébé-là, c'est complètement frais. Ça, c'est le premier jour d'un bébé et je suis 57 années plus âgé que ce bébé. C'est la même date que moi. And you didn't say happy birthday, it was 15 November, but merci. So, il y a une fois, I was a baby, and j'ai inventé ma vie. Effectivement, ça c'est la possibilité pour les humains. Et pour moi, le moment de pas exactement ma naissance, mais c'est les automobiles comme ça en Angleterre. Et le même ici, mais mieux ici. Le petit Renault, c'est beaucoup mieux intéressant que ça. Mais comprendre que toutes les voitures et toutes les choses et tous les gens deviennent antiquité. Ça, c'est la crise pour les humains. And now we have performance. Very good. I never did that. Avec qu'est-ce qu'on sait, une balle de ping-pong? C'est une bonne idée pour les conférences. My favorite, it's the favorite noise of being a teenager, is the sound of the ping-pong ball. I just want you to understand that we travel in time and we travel in cultural time. So that's an illustration. And some people were younger, and it shows. Some of you, in fact all of you, were younger, it doesn't show so much. And my wife said the other day, I remember why I fell in love with you. So I'm not taking her a present from Nice. Mais ces moments sont les provisoires. Ça, c'est fait par un dépressif en Amsterdam, un monsieur très intéressant, galeriste Paul Andriessen. Et ça, c'est la nuit d'un feu horrible, incendie horrible à King's Cross, à Londres. Et j'étais et ça, c'est mon métro. Et j'étais à Amsterdam, et c'est ma femme qui m'avait dit il y a une chose cette nuit horrible. Et ça, je crois que cette possibilité pour les humains, c'est faire les dates, faire les petites lignes d'histoire, les petites chaînes d'expérience. Et les choses, j'aime beaucoup les diapositives. J'aime beaucoup c'est impossible d'expliquer à vous parce que vous êtes trop jeune. Mais la qualité d'une diapositive, c'est une chose magnifique parce qu'il y a image, image, c'est faible, il y a un moment un peu précieux et c'est dans les doigts comme ça. C'est très tactile, mais une chose d'imagination. Ça, n'existe pas dans the slides on the computer. Pour moi, ça c'est une grande tristesse. I'm not being nostalgic, I'm just reporting that une fois there were diapositives and they were like great madeleine. They were a great smell. I won't discuss this, but you could say that you would learn quickly from the subject on the right that I understand modernism. I cannot be a modernist. I arrived too late, like at a train or an aeroplane. I think it's very interesting. Some of it took place here. This is a city which was is it a berceau, a cradle? A petit berceau for modernism, and your light. It's not a surprise the English couldn't have modernism. We don't have the light, and we had an empire, and it's too tiring to do modernism if you've got to deal with an empire and bad light. But I was taught by French people and Germans, French and Germans, and so I have sort of eaten at the table of modernism. And so sometimes I have to make something which connects to that. So this is polyré, and it's fixed with les clous, like I'm an idiot. You cannot use the... that's not a pupitre, what is it? It's a bureau. Yeah, so you can't use the bureau because it's got these stupid nails coming out of it. It's a kind of conundrum as an experience. It's quite aggressive. It's both gentle and aggressive. And then I wanted to talk about our relationships. So this is a room full of relationships. there are people in here you hate, and there are people in here you like, and there are maybe people you have loved, and there might be people you love now, and there might be people you will love in the future. And these are all interchangeable, so it's not fixed. And you get what you get. It's how it is. So, par hasard, j'ai travaillé pour Henry Moore durant une année, la même année que Sgt. Pepper. So, pour moi, tous les deux sont mélangés dans ma tête, Henry Moore and Sgt. Pepper. And the first transplant of the heart, which is a good image, I think. So that, believe it or not, there was a day in 68, 69 when la première fois qu'on fait cette, qu'est-ce que c'est, procedure? Anyway, passing a heart from one person to another. One is dead. It is transportation. Ah! It's worth doing this lecture. Okay. Well, the transportation d'un cœur, pour moi, ça c'était incroyable. Maintenant, c'est plomberie. C'est absolument it's boring. No intelligent doctor wants to go and do heart surgery. It's boring. You do the brain now. But 35, 40 years ago, it was exciting to move a heart. And I remember making a Henry Moore, the best thing possible to make a Henry Moore, to make a kind of heart shape, and listen to the radio. The patient has not died, he's still in a coma. It was a South African doctor. So we have relations with the strangest people. I have relations with Donald Judd, who I knew a little bit, and Henry Moore. This is ridiculous, but it's true, and I have to live with it. And I live in a strange, as the Americans would say, conflicted country, because we're a bit, it's an island, it's near France, it's near Holland, and Netherlands, and it's in a strange conversation with history. So this building on the left, le bâtiment noir et blanc, ça c'est complètement peinture, pas de bois, pas du tout. Ça c'est une fiction. And that's very typical in England, that you'll see something and you'll go, oh look, half-timbered house. And then you go, oh no. And of course this is the basis of postmodernism, and it makes you sit up and smile, but it also makes you want to go to sleep. And we're so strange that when we wanted to have a telephone box, which if you think about it was tellement moderne, and we were at that time quite good ingénieurs, we thought, let's go to Turkey and look at the roof forms of the Byzantine. So we actually have a Byzantine telephone box, but we only have them now as joyaux, as ornaments. But they're strange, but for us, they were normal. J'habite à Londres depuis longtemps, et maintenant c'est jusqu'au côté de Eurostar. En effet, on peut, ça n'existe pas, ce bâtiment maintenant, mais Eurostar c'est dans les arbres là, et ça c'est la gare. Et ça c'est un grand changement parce que en effet ça c'est le centre de Londres. Il y a 40 années, le centre de Londres c'est Hyde Park Corner. Ça c'est le point pour faire les mesures des distances. Mais pour la vérité de la culture, pour la compréhension une vie centralisée. Maintenant, c'est cette bizarre point. C'est effectivement presque Gare du Nord à Paris. Et maintenant, il y a un grand changement là, mais tous les changements, tous l'urbanisme, toute l'imagination de ce lieu m'intéresse beaucoup. Et ça, c'est cette petite phrase, c'est un monsieur, un ami chanteur d'opéra. Nous sommes en Italie, et ça, c'est le mot de design. That's the end of design. Forget design, it's over. Design now is craft or les petites choses pour nous amuser. There's nothing left to do because it is just technology now. And the technology has to have a few shapes. And Mr. Apple, Jonathan Ive, is très sage. But the great period of imagining new forms is over. And you can test it because go into the street and see if you can find more than 6 kinds of motor car. There's nothing to choose from. It's completely, I know because I just have to buy a car. It's just not interesting. So I think that's interesting to me because I'm from the period when design was thrilling and exciting, and we thought it would make the world better. It was a utopia. So I think it's quite tough, whatever design now means. And of course, as life changes, you have the strange effect that Henry Moore could not possibly imagine. People who make exhibitions, curators, they really like dead artists. Don't be a live artist and work with museums or curators. They hate you because you're alive. This is so inconvenient and difficult. But dead is great. You can say, let's put Henry Moore in a park in London, and everyone will go to the park to look at Henry Moore. You bring Mr. Moore's storage, Grand Hangar de Moore, and it all turns up. But the monsieur qui fait le logistique, he's on the mobile, and Henry could not imagine it. I make les choses que je fais sont très modestes, très simples, un peu comme 2 mots, 3 mots. Quelquefois, il y a des titres. À gauche, le titre de ça, c'est Dear Sarah, I thought of you. Un étudiante. Une fois. But everybody here has an appetite. Everybody here prefers carrots to onions, or chou to potatoes, or whatever. Everyone here has taste and disposition. And my disposition seems to be that I like things that collide and have pregnant or uneasy or stupid relationships. So these 2 balls, you can imagine, are in a ridiculous relationship. They can't go anywhere, and they're very physical, and they're about eye level. And in a way, they're like a live version. Ça, c'est la version vivant que les 2 sauts, where that's not live, that's very dead. One has penetrated the other, and it's got stuck there. Et quelquefois, je suis un peu littéraire. J'aime mes livres. Je crois que le livre, c'est la plus beau architecture du monde. I think the book is the most incredible invention. The idea that you could make a back and a front and have contents and turn the pages, and the whole structure is fantastic. I don't know whether it will survive, but we will remember it as a great invention that worked for 600 years. And I often make things with books which are presque boulimique, where I put things into the book until the book can take no more. So these are English sweets. The English like sweets. They call them sweets. They don't call them candy. And they have ridiculous names. And the names have proposals. So this is called From Boost to Wham. And I now realise that this might be a kind of tristesse for my children, because my children are your age, a little bit older. So when they were about 10, 11, 12, they stopped being children and they started to become us. And I didn't, it wasn't a self-conscious thing, but I now think maybe this was a sort of little memorial to stickiness and childhood stickiness, or even the beginning of adult stickiness. And I remember them helping me a little bit. They would suggest names and we would look for the sweets. Normally I don't want to look for things, I like to find things. So the ballet, they would have been found, and I would have one day noticed in the studio what a lot of brooms I've got. I really prefer to be a finder than a looker. I travel a lot, and I like travelling because I'm uncomfortable, so I don't want to stay on the island. Even yesterday, it was nice to go to this strange place, Gatwick, and go, whee, I'm going to go to Nice. That still has a thing for me to get off that island. And the week before I went to Dallas. I didn't have quite so much excitement, but it's good to make that distance because it reminds you that you are cultural. So this is, Chinese people have to keep the door open, same as French people. They have an unusual sense of structure and decoration, which is everywhere. It's not, this is one corner that's nearly in Afghanistan actually, that's in Kashi. But where I live is perhaps also bizarre. How do I know that this is in a part of England where the British government is run from, in the Cotswolds, and a child is having a birthday party, and this is the code. I know that the child is having a birthday party. And it's an aggressive culture. I don't know why the English are aggressive, but there's something not too good about, good and bad about English aggression. So this is a concrete post where someone has written very aggressively out. That means kill it, c'est fini, which means that the post is not wanted. And then somebody wants to celebrate some bad English football. I know nothing about football, so I'm completely bemused. And we make sculptures all the time, or we make physical. We are physicalizers. So these are Chinese people who want to look at the bird's nest. Ai Weiwei is actually very stupid stadium, but very good looking, helped by very, very vain Swiss people called Herzog and de Meuron. But you have to know about making things to decide whether it's a very clever building or a very stupid building, but it's a very good looking objet. So they want to see it, but they can't see it because it hasn't opened. So they find some pavé and they climb up. And all day long, 2 people would get down, 2 more people would get up, 3 would get down, 3 would get up. This was a continuing. This is a wedding at Henry Moore's house 30 years after he died, so now it's a kind of, crikey, what is it, a coffin. It's the worst thing that can happen to an artist, a sort of site of pilgrimage, but really it's a park. And his grandson got married, and to my surprise I was invited, and it was a horrible English day in the summer, and the English dress up for weddings in a way that is dégueulasse, really embarrassing. My wife is not there. And the ground was wet, so people made these little rodins, burgers, les bourgeois de Calais, and would gather on these little, what are they called? Panneaux? Anyway, you understand. Really, I'm interested in the unaccountable. And I think for most artists, that's what's interesting, whether you're the unaccountable in your head, the unaccountable in your experience, or that you make something which is unaccountable. And very occasionally things happen where you just think, this is not happening, I don't believe it. So I was exhibiting the two buckets in a gallery in a museum called Elles in Porto. And I arrived on the first morning, and outside someone had done this. Did they know I was coming? What is this? And inside are my two buckets. In l'automne, maybe less here, but maybe plus au nord, you can sometimes find a single leaf in the middle of space, and there is no understanding of why the leaf is in the space. It's just there. It's a kind of biblical Harry Potter moment. And this leaf, I'm very observant, and I walked around this leaf, trying to understand why the leaf was in space, and I couldn't see the toile d'araignée which kept it there. It was completely invisible. And then finally the light did the right thing, and I went, ah. But I think that's a very important kind of experience. It's not because I think it's not an interesting photograph. In fact, I think photography is stupid, a really stupid thing. It's a useful tool. But I think we all of us need these things which we don't understand. So I make things which are a little insecure. The best moment of these is putting a stick on. The moment of putting a stick on is just fantastic, and I'm the only person that really knows how to do that. And the stick does something very strange for a minute, and then it usually does that, and then it stops. And that's the language of gravity, and that little point, and its centre de gravité. Et je m'intéresse beaucoup que nous sommes enfants. We like, nous aimons les petites comédies, in English we say make-believe. How do you say that? Make-believe. Faire croire. That's great. And people are really stupid. I mean, people are getting less and less, they really are getting less and less knowledgeable about how far down. But that's a step, and it was my job before I stepped to think how far it was. People are really beginning to forget the world is physical, that's an edge, and it's a continuous space. So people say to me, it's incredible the way you get the ladder to support the plates, because they don't any longer really know. Because the world is so magic, they don't really know that there's a piece of glass in a hole in the wall, and the plates are on the piece of glass, and then afterwards you put the ladder up. And I'm not being horrible, I'm just saying it's funny because it's an advantage to me because it makes people go, oh, look at the knife and the plates. It's, you know, the world is held together with screws and glue, and look at an early Picasso collage, you know, he sat at his kitchen table and went, you know, they are made, they're actually made. I'm interested in dimension, the physical facts of space. I think it's very funny that this lecture theatre is about quarter too long. Sorry not to look at you, but you're behind me. I think it's an interesting thing that we understand space and we have expectations of things being secure or not. Et j'ai fait quelquefois des commissions ou des relations avec sponsors, et c'est chaque fois absolument horrible. Ça c'est Absolute Vodka in Venice. Affreux, absolutely disgusting, ridiculous people, and rude, not even pas de courtoisie. And you work like a fucking slave because you're an artist and you're stupid enough to think, oh, Absolute Vodka asked me to do something in Venice. And I really advise you, you know, if you want to discuss this in the next few days, be very thoughtful about these relations, because if you can't keep the most elementary control, it just makes you unhappy. And you also notice that you paid for it all, or you certainly won't make money out of it. So I'm still happy to discover that Mr. and Mrs. Eames, I had a birthday, somebody gave me a fake Eames coat book. I don't want one. It was lying around at home. We had some nice wine. And then I noticed that the size of the Eames rack is the same size as the wine box. And I thought, ha! So I just screwed the Eames to the wine box. For me, that's a great pleasure. It's like buying a pair of shoes. If they fit, it's nice. It's like other things that fit that make us happy. Et voilà. The man on the right, il est mon voisin à Londres, il est Iraqi, and chaque jour il me dit, qu'est-ce que vous faites? Qu'est-ce que vous faites? And I said, I just want to photograph the way you shut the door. It's really very eccentric. And I know it's la langue du Maghreb, it's all over the world, it's only in the stupid West we don't do this because we have doors. And every day he arranged different pieces of wood differently for about 2 years. And maybe once a week we would have a little argument. It became a very nice relationship. These are the bosses. These are French. They speak French. Les araignées. That's one of my most favourite words because araignée is the rays, as in rays du soleil. What they do is clever. In the night they go, and they know exactly where the wind is. They understand everything about space and opportunity. And as their little thing goes over, they go, and then they can start work. I think I don't know very much about them, but I like meeting them in the morning. I think they're très spécial. In your time, art has become, Western art, or global art, has become theatre, spectacular. Quite like les courses. I know the man who invented this museum, Tate Modern, I'm sure he didn't know what he was doing, or he didn't know how big a bomb was going to go off, how big a thing he had started, and now he has to control it. They have to add more to Tate Modern just to get rid of the people. They have to put more building there just to get all the fucking people away from the art, which is a really strange problem and a strange thing to happen in 10 years. I went to the lunch for Doris Salcedo when this opened, and there were 50 young people from Colombia who made these cracks. It's really theatre design, and they're very, very fine work. But obviously, they're not cracks. They're paintings of cracks. And I was very interested in the kind of energy you need to make this kind of event. But I love the way that what happened was, effectivement, c'est un Giacometti. And it would give me great pleasure to take les frères Giacometti and go, look what happened in the space to les gens. So people started to behave in completely different ways because humans must give attention. I have made a few things which are a little spectacular, but I think they're quieter than that. This is something I made about 15 years ago, and then sometimes people ask me to make it again. It's exhausting to make. It needs to be complicated. It needs to have every kind of book imaginable. It has to have the Bible, bad cooking books, pornography, gardening, great works of literature. There has to be this sense that you're being confused. And also, I'm very interested in looking up. I think when you look up, when your neck hurts, when you do this, you start to look in a different way. I think I like the idea that maybe the brain is tipped and it gets a bit stupid. But there's definitely another kind of imagination upwards. And you see that in architecture, you see it in cathedrals, you see it when you lie under a tree and look through the tree. I even think it's in watching aeroplanes. It's a different space. But it's very, very exhausting to put up, and I have to put it up with other people because you have to have somebody who's doing the putting, and it has to have me as the art director. It's people now get married under this one. It's in Istanbul. Some of you have met the man on the left. He came here to work with Ryan Gander. He's my son. He's very funny, but he gets very bored with very stupid people. So we shared a bed in Venice during the Biennale, which is a little strange, I think. I don't mind sharing a bed with him, but there's a funny moment where, what was he, 28? He was 28 and I was 62. There was something about this old man and this young man in this bed. And then every morning we go, we're going to work. And he would say, fucking Antonio, because we work with an Italian crew, and really the job of putting up something like the Venice Biennale is just stupid. Why would you take art to a place surrounded by water and try and display it? It's crazy. So Antonio was a nice man, but he had too many things to do. It's difficult. I think it's important to remember how quickly it goes from this sort of effort to the situation on the right. The man in the middle wearing black with long hair is one of the most powerful dealers in London, a man called Ivor Bracker. Very intelligent, very unusual personality, a Gothic character. And if you go to his house, it is just full of, as you might say, les bonnes choses, good things. So there's Antonio. And you have to give respect, to sit on these ladders and then move them with your legs. They were walking the ladders like it was normal. So we feel there's a lot of class in this room. There's a lot of expectation that somebody will do something for us, but there are other people asking us to do something for them. There's a lot of very sophisticated transactions, diplomatic and physical transactions, and there's nothing like putting up artwork to really feel that force at work. I think it's very interesting. Ça c'est le plus polémique, ça c'est à New York il y a 2 années. Et quelqu'un m'avait dit, ça c'est incroyable, where did you find all this stuff? And I said, I walked from the hotel to the gallery. That's New York. And in Dallas somebody said, you couldn't work here, it's so clean. And obviously, or maybe not obviously, the person, I have slept in Roland Barthes' bed. I've slept with my son, and I've slept with, no, that's different. I've slept in the same bed as my son, and I've slept in Roland Barthes' bed in a small hotel in Genève. Or at least I was told it was his bed. These would perhaps not exist without French intelligence about what are things and why do we give them names, les choses. So here are 2 men who ils ne parlent pas anglais, ils sont Uyghurs, ils sont de plus ouest de Chine, et je vais petit guide à Beijing, to Time Out Guide to Beijing en anglais, and il prend le livre, il tourne les pages comme les enfants et il observe les photos. Et il comprend, ça c'est Beijing, the capital city, wow, will we ever go there, how exciting. Or maybe down the Chinese, we are Uyghur, this is how they live. They're looking at un porc, a roast pig. It's not possible for these Muslims, they don't eat roast pig. I, of course, understand nothing. I'm eating my lunch and I'm watching them, and I'm a human, I understand, they're excited, they're pointing, they're having a fiction about a state capital. I don't know where intangibly is, but I want to go there. I mentioned relations, so we have other relations who we think are important. Everybody has them. You have fictional mothers, fictional fathers, uncles, grandfathers. I think Klaes Oldenburg made bad marriages and great art. Really intelligent artist. I've met him a couple of times, and every time it's been a great pleasure. He's not. The system of art at the moment there's not a lot of celebration of Klaes Oldenburg, but I think he understood things, maybe because he's Swedish-American, so he's in some kind of complicated relationship to what America has been these last 40 years. It's my friend Tom Sachs, who is an impossible young man. He's like a Unabomber. If you go to New York, he's very receptive. You can go to his studio on Centre Street. There's a slight sense of craziness and violence. He got Mary Boone jailed, which is a good thing. And my son was working for him at the time, my eldest son, who is in that picture at the top on the right. He was working for Tom just before he went to university, and he was somehow implicated in getting Mary Boone sent to jail, and I went, yes. I think c'est très dur to be d'être les enfants des artistes. It's a really horrible space. And je m'excuse mes enfants, but it's what happens. À ce moment-là, il travaille avec un monsieur dans la rue en Inde. Il était étudiant au Collège Royal il y a 7 années, avant moi, ou avant que je suis professeur au Royal College. Et un petit projet, il a fait une visite à Jaipur. Et tout d'un coup, il est sur cette... what's a magazine called? Well, what is the word for magazine?
Magazine.
No, magazine, that's un shop. Is it a magazine? Is it really? Magazine. I thought it was called...
It's not magazine.
Okay, but it's from the... Yeah. Boom. So, he ends up on the front of this magazine. He's very modest. And he said to me, why am I on the front of this magazine? You know, his mother is thrilled. His grandfather is going, marvellous. Ooh. And he said, why am I on the front of the magazine? And I said, how often do you see a young white man kneeling in the street, capable of working with somebody who works in the street all the time, as if they had known each other forever, with no language at all? He spent a week working with his family in India. It's a questionable relationship, but I loved it. He couldn't understand why it made an image, that he was heating up pieces of steel and changing their shapes, because he's that kind of boy, man. Tom is the sort of person who has to have CCTV in his toilet so you can see who's waiting on the sidewalk. And I think you can't be someone like Tom Sachs if you don't live in America. And I think America is nuts, absolutely crazy. And it doesn't see itself. I know a lot of very intelligent Americans who obviously can see, I can have good conversations with them, but the big project is really very scary. So, the important thing about being in the world is none of us know where we are. We're lonely, afraid, insecure, we want attention, and we want to know, where am I? And most of the time, we are stupid tourists, lost, and we're very pleased when people tell us this. Surprise Norton on there. And we are sad and the world is not. The sun is never sad. The sun is clever. We're sad and funny. We know how to keep the window open with a glass. And we understand language very well. This is ceci n'est pas une pipe. You go to buy a little corner in America, you get the best joint in America. You really understand plumbing. But you wouldn't expect someone to use one for the tobacco and the other for the plumbing. One is part of a pipe, the other is part of a pipe, but they're different pipes. And if you don't understand that, you're probably not a human. But we're probably within 10 minutes of the end, or I'll promise you that it is. I really like collections, the way that things gather. This summer I bought a pipe because I'm frightened that in conferences like this maybe I am going to be pompeux, so I could keep it in my pocket and I could start. I could hold it, but I left it and I apologise. It's probably one of those pipes. I just worked in a museum, which of course has the greatest things in the world because they are really old and they have survived and we know nothing about them, but we want to know about them. And I'll come back to that. I have a huge collection of how things end because we don't know how to end a talk, we don't know how to end a relationship, we don't know how to really even end a journey because we're actually waiting to be ended, which is called death. And I've got hundreds of pictures of this story of how you finish a piece of toile. Hundreds of pictures of really imprimerie, different kinds of printing. Lots of things which contain expectation, but you don't know what the expectation is. Venise on the right. Venise on the left and the right. If you ever get asked to do anything in the Arsenale, I can tell you 10 things not to do. It's fucking hard. I think making shows is a strange thing. I think if you don't like, in art school where they say, in England they say, put your work up. If you don't like the transaction of putting up your work, then you shouldn't be an artist. Or you should go a long way away and hide somewhere and just be an artist, but make it into a private act. But I think there is something very funny about becoming, the moment of work becoming public. I think it's an important thing to discuss and understand. This is a show last September at, I can never remember, Nelson Freeman, not Freeman, Nelson, à Paris. And there are 2 colonnes, one in one floor. Sorry? No, Freeman. But I know which way that is. Yeah, Nelson Freeman. Anyway, they're merchants. It's a shop. But il y a 2 colonnes, one in one floor, one au rez-de-chaussée, and one in the other floor. And I put the same objects on each column in the other way around and tied them with wire. So the experience of understanding these 2 columns, one above the other, you had to walk up the stairs and discover the second column. So if you didn't do that, you wouldn't really see why I had put things on the column. It's a perfect example of something you shouldn't discuss in a lecture. Bois des Landes is always not very good, and if you're lucky, it's really bad. And so I bought some Bois des Landes that was unhappy, and I made special brackets for it to make it into good shelves. And I love the fact that the bottle wrap is called, maybe not here, but in the part of France I know it, they call it un if, which is a yew tree, and yew trees must have been the tree of the peg, because if you cut a branch of yew tree, d'un if, il y a les branches et les petits toc 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 toc. And I think it's really nice when you say, can I buy the bottle rack? And they say, ah oui, leaf. It's also a very funny word, an IF. But I'm stupid, so I put it in cling wrap. What do you call that? The funny American plastic. Film transparent. Well, I put it in a lot of that, and I think that kind of art is a disaster. I'm just not interested in repetitive actions. And halfway through I thought, Eva Hess, where in the fuck are you? And I think it's really interesting that some people like repetitive actions and they make great art. There'd be no Agnes Martin if there weren't repetitive actions. There's lots of artists who are involved in that, but it's not for me. But I wanted to make Leaf, I wanted to take all the air away from it and make it go away, so I had to go every bit. It's hard work. I'm interested in time and that things fall down. This is Cornwall at the bottom. That's not a war. It's just called the end of commerce, the end of tin. And I love that you need very little information to tell the time. You can put your finger on a watch straight away and you know what the time is. This is the museum where I imagined that we live in a tomb, and maybe this culture is in a tomb. So I took lots and lots of things from Lythgoe, from £1 shops, and I made these vitrines of all this rubbish that we live with, that we love. And I really, de moi, je deviens une vraie autorité sur notre culture. Toutes les petites choses, tous les habitudes. And I realized that the culture is completely based on fear. Pills, masses of things to do with light in case it gets dark. A constant sense that something is going to happen. There's a set, may not be in that picture, but there was a set that you could buy, all the things to make the house safe for the child. A whole box of shit for this fictitious, dangerous child. So the greatest feeling was this idea that the world is threatening and that if you do this, you can stop it. Lots of things for protecting us from dirt. A complete panic about the world being dirty. This would be better talked about another day. This is in Basel in the summer. It's called A Room Full of Lovers, because when these chains enter the les vis, no, that's not vis, what is that? Crown. Serre-joint. Okay. When they enter the serre-joint, I've got to put this down. When the chain enters, when the chain enters the hands, when the chain enters the serre-joint, you can hold the links and they won't touch. And if you think about it, the condition of chain is that it's in contact with itself all the time. It can't not be in contact. Somehow every chain is touching every other piece of chain. But if you put on my system, the links don't touch. So you can make this little suspension, which is, I think, pretty much what relationships are. You know, these ridiculous, inescapable spaces where, if the distance is right, we're nearly happy. This is another example of that I was a bit rude about the Swiss. You know, they tell you what size the room is and you just work in the room. This was too small and it seemed like a back bedroom to me. I think I did it very well. I'm not ashamed of it, but it's what you're always working for somebody. Won't discuss that. I won't discuss this, but I'll show you the next picture. I enjoyed doing this. This is with what's honey? Miel. And I realised this is perhaps because I have good relationship with bees, not a very good relationship with frelons. And I really like this honey, which comes with a little piece of cire inside. So this is a box. This is a man who makes interesting shows. An interesting man who just makes shows in funny places. This is in Lincoln. This is at the Tate in Liverpool, which is the most terrible gallery in the world to work in. And they lose your work. They actually lose your work. It's true. Too difficult to discuss, but I'm spiteful. I don't know what spiteful is, but I think photographs, I'm a bit malin, maybe. Could I? It's not nice. Spiteful is like Damien Hirst pulling the wings off the flies. Girls are spiteful, actually. Girls are more spiteful than boys. But boys are horrible. Is it malin? Vilain, that sounds right. Who said that? I think it is vilain. Anyway, I feel a little bit vilain towards photography because I love it, but I think it's ridiculous. It's absurd. So I made this little show in a laundry in a funny part of London called the Borough, and I nailed the photographs to the wall with huge nails. And then all the photographers were terribly upset because it looked like I didn't care. But you could see it. So, ridiculous city. If you all come back to London, I will show it to you. It is mad. Should have been destroyed by the Germans, but they just weren't very good at it. Thank you. Il y a une chose qui fait une petite relation entre Ai Weiwei and Herzog de Meuron, les architectes. Tous les trois, they made stadium, à Beijing, avec la forme of the bird's nest. But says, what is that? Nid d'oiseau. But structurally, it is obscene, which is really terrifying. It's just material to make a very interesting picture, but it's really questionable. In the language of architecture, it's really questionable. Ça utilise des gens, des matériaux, to pictorialize a bird's nest. I mean, a bird's nest, excuse me, is fucking wonderful. I mean, a bird's nest, please, it's just great. And there's il y a un écrivain très intéressant, Tim Ingold, il est peut-être écossais, but he works in Aberdeen. I-N-G-O-L-D. And he says that the history of the world is weaving. This is the history of the world. It's not the stupid bricks. The interesting thing about the bricks is not the bricks, it's the mortier. Because the mortier is really a weave, is very light fabric. And he writes beautifully about about this. So, La Stade is the picture, is a very nice, hooray, China, which is great, this is fine, but it's really a logo. It's not a piece of intelligent architecture. So, 6 years later, it's easy for me to go, but I think we should do that. This is the only reason to go to art school is to become usefully critical. I mean, productively, not negatively critical, usefully critical. Does that make sense?
How did you choose your books for your sculpture?
If they've got materials in them.
Yeah.
If I put materials in, they're nearly always dictionaries.
Okay.
But I like the smell of, are they called boucanis? I like those places, which is like walking in them. It's like walking in a tomb. Tombeau, bookshop. They smell of that. Very sad. And they're full of sad men. You don't find very many women in second-hand bookshops. You find people like me. And I think, sometimes you get a book and you just go, yes, and sometimes it's the facture, and maybe you can't say that's American, the facture. Sometimes it's the way it's made. Sometimes it's a little bit of it's graphic. It has to feel, it's like choosing a vegetable. Feel like a good potato. So this one that was bound up like this, which is soudé on every joint, can never open, the book is gone, is called The Loom, which is a great word. The loom of language. I don't know what it means in French. It's les machines, it was once the... No, it's for weaving. Anyway, it's a poetic, wonderful title. The loom is when you have bois in frame. Louder. It's called métier artiste. Okay. So that, in English, which we must have got from the Germans, it's loom. So it says, loom, the cover says in a very nice, probably 50s typography, the loom of language. The book is good. You can buy it. That one is lost. And I also want to say, I really like small things. I think lots of small sculpture is very, very good. I saw 2 Giacometti last week with this high, made during the war. 2 just fantastic. Am I done? Other questions? Party time?
Party time.
Bedtime? I'm here for 2 days, so